everyone. I'm Dan Philgreen, and this is Shell Point Today for the weekend of September 13, 14, and 15. On today's show, David Singer describes how to craft your written memories and stories into creative nonfiction. But first, it's the weekend, and at Shell Point, that means movies are being played on the big screens. We have a couple of movie options, starting Saturday afternoon with the 2012 film Chasing Mavericks. This adventurous tale follows a 15-year-old California boy who loves to surf. He teams up with an old pro to find the perfect surf break, nicknamed Mavericks. Come see this great buddy film on Saturday at 2 p.m. or again at 7 p.m. in the Grand Cypress Room at the Woodlands. And then on Sunday, we have another film from the collection of Paul Peterson. This time it's the Oscar-winning comedy Tootsie from 1982, where Dustin Hoffman disguises himself as a woman to get a job on television. Thankfully, none of us have had to do that. Tootsie plays this Sunday at 2:30 p.m. in the Grand Cypress Room. There are plenty of great stories in the movies, but truly, the best stories are the ones you tell about your own life. We have many great storytellers here at Shell Point, but have you ever considered turning your stories into written nonfiction? There is an art to story writing, and David Singer wants to help you try it with his Academy class, Story Writing. It starts next Thursday, September 19th, in the Buttonwood Room at the Woodlands. Let's learn more.
Hello everyone, I'm here today with David Singer of Teledora. We're talking about a brand new class in the Academy of Lifelong Learning, Writing for Story. Thanks for joining me, David.
Terry, it's great to be here.
We have wanted to have a writing class for a long, long time, and accidentally I found out that you're a writer, and you agreed to teach a class this fall session. So let's talk about it.
Well, this will be a first. I've never taught writing before, but I've learned a lot in the process of writing over the years. My wife was in charge. We went to work for Prison Fellowship, and she was responsible for all the creative staff, apart from myself. I was hired as a writer and a photographer. And she happened upon this book by John Franklin, Writing for Story. And that kind of guided us, pretty much all of the writing that we did at Prison Fellowship. It's where you take true stories, but there's a certain structure, there's a certain thing that makes a story a story.
And we know it when we read it.
Exactly, but you've got to, of course, if you're the writer, you've got to keep that in mind. And it makes a tremendous difference on the questions you ask, the search. You keep those points that you need, those questions that you need answers to in the back of your mind as you're interviewing or finding the story. And of course, if you're writing your own story, that's equally true. You have to think, all right, what is my story? And there are definite parts to it. And at Prison Fellowship, they were real life stories. They were very dramatic. And part of what you want to do is be true to the drama. Capture the reader, get them hooked on what the story is, and follow through. It makes a lot of sense out of how to present yourself.
Well, sure, because we could say, let's just get together on whatever morning and start writing. Oh my gosh, how wonderful to have a focus, to have, it sounds like you're going to kind of put the skeleton out there and we'll just put the skin and bones on our story.
Yes. The model for the class that I'm going to do is I had an opportunity to take a workshop with Madeleine L'Engle. She held it in her home in New York City. I had gotten to know her over the years in a professional way and also through mutual friends. And she went to our church in New York. And Madeleine taught this course in her apartment. Wow. She would take 8 of us at a time, and we would spend 12 weeks. And she'd give us topics to write on. And then we would read to each other the following week, read our story to each other. And of course, it becomes a small community. You get to know one another, and to have Madeleine critique, and the others as well. And she would say, you want to be the servant of the story. Many times, in her style, her approach, you would start out not knowing really where the story was going to go. You'd start writing, and it would take on a life of its own. And so she would say, be a servant to the story.
Now, tell me, how did you get involved in writing yourself?
Well, I never thought of myself as a writer. But I wanted to express myself. And so I started writing for the student college newspaper. And I started doing photography at the same time. And there are two different ways of expressing oneself. And most of the time, professionally, I used both of them simultaneously. I would do my own photography and do my own interviews. Well, I went in the Army, I came back, went to seminary, and at seminary, I was recruited to write the promotional material for the seminary and college, which was, I hadn't thought of myself in that role, but somebody, the professor who was running the development office, apparently picked up that I had this skill to express myself.
Wonderful.
So that was the beginning. Then, after that, I applied. No way was I qualified from my perspective. Christianity Today was looking for an art director. I got the job, which was wonderful. It was a wonderful training ground once again. And because of my limited writing experience at that point, they allowed me to do some writing at the magazine. I wrote all of the headlines, what we call display copy, all the blurbs and that sort of thing. And then I would occasionally write a feature, and they gave me a partial responsibility for a column on the arts. So I did that for a while. Then I got hired by Prison Fellowship and Chuck Colson's prison ministry. Now there you really get to tell. I mean, we had phenomenal stories to tell. And again, it's a matter of going back and using John Franklin's principles to ferret out, to find what is the story in this person's life. I mean, it's one thing for people to tell their story, but to write it and to really retain the drama and keep the reader with you. He gives you the skills, the tools to do that.
And so, for us at Shell Point Retirement Community, what an opportunity to look at a new way to express ourselves. That's what it's all about.
We all have stories in our lives.
Absolutely.
It's just a matter of how to structure them to make them interesting to someone else.
And the creativity is going to be flowing in this room. I am so sure. It's very exciting. Well, let's just invite people. I invite you to take a look at the fall brochure, read the description of the class David Singer is going to teach, writing your story. Sign up at either service desk. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Terry.
Coming up, we are replaying some of the week's best stories from Shell Point TV. But before we do that, let's cover all this weekend's happenings, Academy news, menus, and church news.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the weekend edition of Shell Point TV's Happening segment. I'm Bev Chandley, and this is Suzanne Savada, and we're going to tell you what's going on around here Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We're going to start out at 8:15 with the Stamp Ministry volunteers working in the stamp room on the island. From 8:30 to 11:30, we have the marketplace. That'll be in the administration courtyard. 9 o'clock, we have round-robin men's doubles tennis at the Woodlands tennis courts. And that's followed by a 10 o'clock game of canasta in the game room of the Woodlands. Also at 10 o'clock, the genealogy group will be in the Sable room at the Woodlands. We move to the afternoon, where 12:30 brings us to the mixed progressive bridge game at the Woodlands. Then 1:15, the table tennis will be in the Tarpon room. Also at 1:15, the quilters will be in the Osprey room. Then we have a Vespers in the community room of the Arbor at 1:30. 2 o'clock's the time for euchre. That will be in the Sable room of the Woodlands. At 2:45, we have great decisions. They'll be discussing the future of the euro. They'll be in the Manatee room on the island. At 2:45, we have Vespers in the community room of King's Crown. And then we round out Friday at 6:45 with a game night at the Resident Activity Center. Now, Suzanne's going to tell you what we have going on Saturday.
Saturday starts off at 8 o'clock with the round-robin men's doubles tennis group meeting out at the tennis courts at the Woodlands. At 9:45, we have duplicate bridge in the Manatee room on the island. 10 o'clock, information forum will be in the Grand Cypress room at the Woodlands. At 10:15, the Model Yacht Sailing Club will be out at the Commons Lake at the Woodlands. At 1 o'clock, we have chess being played in the Library Lounge at the Resident Activity Center. And at 1:15, table tennis will take place in the Tarpon room on the island. At 2 o'clock, we have the Saturday DVD, Chasing Mavericks, a 2012 film being showed in the Grand Cypress Room at the Woodlands. At 3:15, we have basic line dancing in the Health Club on the island. At 6:30, Duplicate Bridge will be in the Manatee Room on the island. And at 7 o'clock, we have our second viewing of the Saturday DVD, Chasing Mavericks, in the Grand Cypress Room at the Woodlands. Now let's go to Bev for Sunday.
Sunday morning, we're going to start out at 9 o'clock. We have Christian Life Studies. That'll be in the Game Room of the Woodlands. Then at 9:15, Christian Life Studies will be at the Village Church on the island. Our morning worship service at the Village Church will be at 10:15, and it's also broadcast live on Shell Point TV Channel 12. We move to the afternoon for a 2 o'clock mixed golf league game. That'll be at the Shell Point Golf Club. And then at 6:15, we have our evening service at the Village Church. Well, thank you for joining us for this weekend edition of Shell Point TV's Happening segment, and we will see you back here next week.
Hi, I'm Terry Kolath with your Academy information for the weekend. On Friday the 13th of September, we start our Life Review Reminiscence class at 9 o'clock in the Buttonwood Room of the Woodlands for those who have signed up. I'd like to share with you new classes coming next week. On Monday, the Carefree group is going to discuss their groups. You'll meet Gaz Goslin of Turbin, Suzanne Bennett of Turbin, and Dr. Carl Meyer of Oakmont. Lester Davidson will present a program he created for the Academy, America the Beautiful, in the Arbor on Monday at 10 a.m. If you missed it the first time around, you have another opportunity. On Tuesday, Digital Camera Prep School will take place with Herb Sklar of Eagles Preserve. And Professor Adrian Kerr will begin the series, The Story of India. On Wednesday, Technology Today and Tomorrow presents iWorks, Pages, Numbers, Keynote, Templates, with Penny Modridge of Nautilus. And then on Thursday, David Singer of Teledora begins story writing. On Friday, Academy on the Go, what happens at the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation Marine Lab on Sanibel and Punta Rasa.
Menus for your weekend. In the Crystal Room, the Crystal Platter on Friday is a shrimp skewer with yellow rice and Caribbean vegetables. The dinner special is the seafood buffet for $14.95, and the soup of the day is cream of mushroom. In the Island Cafe for lunch on Friday, enjoy a seafood salad on a croissant with chips for $6.95. The dinner special is Chef's Choice for $7.95. On Saturday, the Crystal Room is closed. In the Island Cafe for lunch on Saturday, enjoy a French dip with fries for $6.95. The dinner special is Italian sausage with peppers and onions and cheese tortellini for $7.95. On Sunday, the Crystal Room features its Sunday brunch for $17.50. In the Island Cafe for lunch on Sunday, enjoy a meat lover's scramble with home fries for $6.95. And for dinner, the special is Chef's Choice for $7.95. All menus are available 24 hours a day at www.shellpoint.net.
Greetings and welcome. My name is Glenda Stephenson, administrator at the Village Church. And as we share Village Church connections today, I'm also sharing the time with Randy Woods, our pastor of worship. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you, Glenda.
Randy, we are here to talk about the weekend.
Yes, here we are, the third week of September already. Time is flying by.
It's amazing. And I know Pastor Andy and Jean have been on vacation for a few weeks. We're going to be welcoming them back.
Yes, good to have them back as we continue in worship, and he will continue and coming to a conclusion soon of our study of the book of Ephesians.
We have been steadily working through that book throughout the course of the summer, and he's in the last chapter, chapter 6.
Yeah.
And I know we have several good messages still waiting for us.
Yeah, he'll be focusing attention this week on be strong in the Lord, put on the armor of God. And that's the text that is actually the anthem is based on. Tom Fecky has written an anthem based on that text from Ephesians 6, and the choir will sing that on Sunday. And as we've done the other weeks in September earlier, and we'll continue every Sunday, celebrating God's goodness and fellowship that we enjoy in the church and community, a song that the choir has sung will become a song that the congregation will sing soon called Celebrate. Come and celebrate.
And we do that every Sunday as we gather for worship. We celebrate God's goodness together.
We do.
So it will be a special Sunday morning. And then again on Sunday night, we're picking up the series on Noah.
Exactly, and that's why it's been raining all summer. Pastor Andy's been teaching us about what we have not known about Noah. And it has been funny. It seems like it rains every Sunday afternoon. So there could be rain or maybe not, but regardless, Pastor Andy will be teaching on Noah again Sunday evening.
So we look forward to Sunday, both morning and evening.
Yes.
And we certainly invite you to join us Sunday morning at 10:15, Sunday night at 6:15. We'd love to see you there. Have a wonderful day.
It's time for our ShellPoint TV Week in Review, and we began this week talking to our pharmacist, Yao Adu Sarkoti, about the blood-thinning drugs known as anticoagulants.
I'm Mary Franklin here today with our own ShellPoint pharmacist, Yao Adu Sarkoti. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Mary.
And you're going to be a presenter in an upcoming Health Connections program, Anticoagulation. It'll take place in the Social Center on Monday, September 16th at 1:15 p.m. And for those who have heard you speak in the past, Yao, we know that you take a complex discussion and topic and bring it down so we can all understand that.
I try my best.
Well, can you do that for us here in a few minutes? What is anticoagulation?
Anticoagulation, in simple terms, is preventing our blood from clotting too much in order for us not to get sick or to prevent, some event happening in the future. The body has a way of doing it naturally, but it could be overwhelmed based on our age or pre-existing health conditions. Therefore, we use extra medications to actively do the process of thinning out the blood so it can flow very easily. Essentially, that's what anticoagulation is.
Okay. And you explained to me one of the treatments used as the agent is Coumadin. That's why people go and have Coumadin. It's one of the most popular forms of anticoagulation.
Right. Coumadin, made by DuPont, a chemical company called DuPont, is the best known drug for doing anticoagulation, and it's still on the market. When I was in school, there was not even a thought of using the generic for that because it wasn't what we call bioequivalent. But over the years, technology has developed so much so that it's cheaper now and it's better probably to use the generic warfarin and not have to pay so much for it. But that's the agent used most often. You hear anticoagulation is Coumadin or warfarin, but there are other agents also that are used both in the injection form and oral form.
Okay. In anticoagulation, it happens naturally in our body. There's nothing we can do ourselves.
Really not. Once the physician, could be a family doctor, the cardiologist, the pulmonologist, a whole group of specialists within the medical field can get involved in the process of determining an individual needing anticoagulation. But on our own, we cannot determine that we're going to need it unless perhaps as we do these days, extrapolate that, my dad or a very close family member had stroke or got sick of such a condition. They discuss it with the doctor and they say, well, you might need this sort of treatment. But oftentimes, tests may be performed, or if a person has such a pre-existing condition as mitral valve prolapse or prosthetic valve and things like that, then we can make that determination.
So that triggers the physician or the specialist to go in and check to see how thick your blood is, or there's a clot somewhere. Okay. Well, it's nice to know that we can be proactive these days if there are some signs and go in and test instead of waiting for it to thicken too much.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, if it does happen, we can, first of all, what we call thrombolytics or clot busting. The doctors would do such surgical procedures to get rid of it. And thereafter, or if a person had an open heart surgery, for instance, to replace a bad valve, beyond that, we say you go on this drug for the rest of your life to prevent any such happening.
Right. It is something that you need to keep up on, but if you go on a regular basis, you should live life pretty normally, correct?
Pretty much, yeah. And I wanted to mention, Coumadin or warfarin is the first drug that comes to mind, and that's very well justified. But there are a group of them in different chemical classes like heparins or antiplatelet drugs, etc., etc. Even aspirin can be used for anticoagulation, either by itself or together with other drug agents. Okay. So.
Well, yeah, this is going to be a very interesting topic. So if you have any questions about anticoagulation, if you have had a stroke, heart issues, or any pulmonary issues, this would be a great topic for you to learn more from this walking medical encyclopedia right here at Shell Point. He can. It all comes right off of his head. There was no prep work for this interview. He is a smart man, so come and learn from him on Monday, September 16th at 1:15 p.m. in the Social Center. You can sign up at either service desk, and I'm Mary Franklin along with Yao. Have a happy and healthy day.
Herb Wilcox spent the 1980s working as a contractor in Saudi Arabia. Here are some of his memories of living and working in the Middle East.
I graduated from Bucknell University up in central Pennsylvania. Was in the Army during the Korean War. However, I was in Italy during the Korean War, which was the best place to be. After that, I worked for Westinghouse for 13 years, where I was engineering director on the lunar camera tube, the camera that went to the moon. My youngest of 3 children was ready to go to college, and I didn't have the tuition. So I got a job in Saudi Arabia.
8,000 miles from New York, there lies a primeval desert, a mass of drifting sand and sun-baked earth 1/3 the size of the United States. Remote, unknown, and isolated. Perhaps this country, so unproductive on the surface, might contain minerals below the surface, including oil. This was the starting point of a new American business venture abroad.
Aramco, A-R-A-M-C-O, was the Arabian American Oil Company. When Aramco first got there were no paved roads in the country as far as we know. No power, no telephones between cities. And this was 1932, 33. So Aramco had to do all of these things for their people. They did not have a hospital. Aramco built an excellent hospital, which even I had access to, and that was where the royal family came to be treated. Major cities, they did not have maps of major cities, and the streets weren't named. Well, how did they work for 1,000 years without this? If you had a place that you said, well, it was near the camel market, it was over by the souk where all the stores are, or it was near a mosque, that was about as good as you could get, and then they'd walk in. With the Aramco Air Force, we flew over and took aerial photographs, and then our department sat down and we started labeling the names of streets and things. Now the reason...
What did you call them?
Most of them were numbered. We figured, like streets and avenues, because we didn't want to offend anybody by naming a wrong street. Saudi Arabia was so undeveloped that they had no industry, no exports except oil. They actually had to import gasoline because they didn't have a refinery there when they first started. They have pipelines that they need paint. They didn't have a paint company. And my job and my department was to make connections between foreign companies, Japanese, British, German, American, all joint ventures with local entrepreneurs, and we would set up factories, whether it's making paint or making electrical wire or anything else they needed. Saudi Arabia was an extremely conservative country. There was no alcohol, no movies, no entertainment. How were you going to keep people working? Aramco built, they have 3 compounds, they're called, and these were enclosed compounds where foreigners only could live. We had baseball fields, bowling alleys, tennis courts lit and open 24 hours a day because people were working shifts, and There were several thousand foreigners there, many of them petroleum engineers and chemists. A few would end up trying to make their own alcohol. A few, I think about 100. And our commissary, which was like a supermarket, sold yeast in 10-pound bags and sugar in 50-pound sacks. Now that's a lot of baking. And so there was a lot of it. And but Aramco said no, it should not be there. And the Saudi police could come in unannounced and search your house. And people had gone to jail.
Did you ever sample any of this?
Yeah, it was terrible. We keep hearing this business about Saudi Arabia not allowing women to drive. And it is true, and it's true to this day, and you hear about some things. This little document is a Saudi Arabian driver's license official for my wife, so that when they say there never was, they are. Maybe I should sell this on eBay. But again, she could drive only in our compound. When we went into town, they had to wear a dress with a long skirt down to the ankles. They had to wear a kerchief over their head and sleeves down to their hands. So in effect, they were covered. Women could not work in stores. And so when my wife had to go into a clothing store for something, a man waited on her. There is a religious police, in fact, literally. And they would go around the cities and arrest Saudi women if they weren't modestly dressed and everything else. My wife and I and our friends, we'd like to go into town once in a while to eat dinner. And there was a Chinese restaurant. And so we'd rush into the Chinese restaurant before prayer time started so we could eat during prayer time and then get out. Things got a little tighter, and as we were eating, the police would come in and force us to get up and go out in the street and stand until prayer time was over and then go back in. You know, this kind of puts a damper on an evening. Since there was virtually nothing to do, Aramco built the first television station in the Middle East. And it was all in English because they intended it only for the foreigners in the camp. There was this, "Thou shalt not create graven images." And the Saudis took this absolutely to faith. In fact, it's a picture, a painting, a sketch, or anything that involves any living thing. When Aramco started their station, the government said, "That's a picture." But we said, even with a tape, there's no picture. You can't see it. It's not like a film and a camera. So it's here and that's it. And the first program they had a mullah get on and read from the Quran. And the religious people looked at it and said, yeah, it came through perfectly right, so you can have it. So we got into Saudi Arabia TV, Aramco TV, started getting movies and things from America. And some of it was ridiculous. We had, you know, really racy programs like the Waltons, but also they had the Muppets. And if you recall, there was a character called Miss Piggy. 2 strikes. Not only was it a woman, but it was a pig, pork. And so somebody there, anytime Miss Piggy started to come on the air, bang, the screen went black. And we had dozens of incidents like that, so it was probably one of the funniest TV seasons we've ever gone through. The Arab League set up a boycott. Any foreign company that had a manufacturing operation in Israel could not sell their goods in Saudi Arabia or any Arab country, theoretically. So, for instance, in Saudi Arabia, you could not buy a Ford, but you could buy a Chrysler or a Chevrolet. Of course, most of the sheikhs had, you know, BMWs and Mercedes, so it didn't matter. I had a business friend who had the Coca-Cola franchise in a whole country in a desert where it was hot. And suddenly, with the Arab boycott, he could no longer sell Coca-Cola because there was a Coca-Cola bottling plant in Israel. And the bottling company is one that you buy hundreds of gallons of syrup from Coca-Cola Company in the United States, and he had gallons and gallons of it, and suddenly he couldn't sell it. He changed the name from Coca-Cola to Cocky-Cola, Cocky being a good Indian sort of a name. And so he kept selling it until he ran out of syrup, went out of business. I tell you what we used to do. Aramco had their own Air Force, and they were flying to Europe and the United States and come back. And sure enough, the pilots in particular would load up the plane with Coca-Cola. And so whenever we got on a plane flying from Jeddah to Dhahran or wherever it was, we'd reach in and down as much Coca-Cola as we could get. My friend and I, we had to go to Europe. He wore the traditional robes in Saudi Arabia, but as soon as we got on the plane, he was in immaculately dressed with good Paris fashions. Hostess came down to feed us all breakfast in little, tea napkins and everything, silverware. And finally, she came and she started to pass a plate of eggs and bacon. And I said, not him. And he poked me and said, mind your own business. There are, I guess, any religion. There are moderates, there are conservatives, and there are radicals. For Saudi Arabia, as I say, I was there, it was a long time ago. I left in 1984. A lot has changed, but even more has not changed.
Herb Sklar wants to help you try the world of digital photography. His digital camera prep school starts on Tuesday, and he gave us this preview.
Hello everyone, I'm here today with Herb Sklar of Eagles Preserve. We're talking about yet another class in the Academy of Lifelong Learning with Herb Sklar. Thank you for joining me, Herb.
Oh, you're welcome.
Now you're going way into the future and into the past with photography here at Shell Point, a photo club, all sorts of things, and you're even going to extend yourself to digital camera prep school for people bringing the camera in the box.
And bring the instructions with you, please. All these cameras are alike, but the menus are all different. So it's really important that you bring the instructions. If you've just got a camera and you don't even want to put the batteries in it, that's okay too.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we really can just come with the camera in the box and the instructions?
That's fine. We'll get you going. That's the whole idea of this class is to get you out there, start taking pictures, and then you can join the photo club and learn how to use it better.
You know, that's something I admire so much about you. You're a photographer, you're a professional, you're a caring person, and you take people from the very beginning with their camera through extreme creativity, and then
it's called recruitment of members for the photo club.
But then share together on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And the photo show. I mean, there's just so much reason to get a box and bring it.
There's a lot of opportunity at Shell Point to grow in photography.
Yes, yes.
And more coming.
That's
more
wonderful.
coming.
So what's the thing about getting a digital camera? I was with the big Canon, the dark room, the whole thing, and a digital camera was like, I don't know if I want to do that. But it's still taking a photograph. And there's still the creative element.
I think when digital cameras first came out, a lot of us laughed. I said, oh, they're cute, but they'll never be as good as a film camera. They surpass the film camera now. They really do. There just isn't anything you can't do with them now. And as far as what camera is right for you, that's a budget and a carry problem. If some of them are a little too heavy for you, some of them cost a little too much money for you, some of them feel right. So you got to work that out. But I'll tell you this, all of these cameras are pretty equal. Some of them will do things better or faster or easier. But you can take a great picture with one of those little point and shoots or one of those full frame $2,000 ones. You really can. I've seen it done. So almost any camera you buy will work for you.
So that's
but don't come in with your phone. Phone cameras are not where photography is yet.
Yeah, we want a digital camera.
Bring a real camera.
But how nice to know that, you think about it. This is a camera you're going to carry around with you.
Right.
Get one that's right for you, that fits your budget, that fits your purse or your pocket or wherever you're going to carry it.
And what you want to do. If you're going to be photographing wildlife, I wouldn't suggest you get one of those little ones with a teeny lens. You need something that's going to...
Because you're going to be a little bit farther from the wildlife.
Right. But if you're only taking pictures of your family, and then, that may work for you. So you really think about what you're going to be doing with it. But that will change as you get better, unfortunately.
And the technology is such that the prices come down.
The prices come down, the cameras get better and simpler and smaller.
Yeah.
And what's happening now, the big trend is compact digital cameras, where they're much smaller, but the quality is almost that of a full-frame camera. That's becoming very popular. And they're a little pricey, but they, in time, will come down, too. So, yeah, it's always changing.
And how wonderful that you don't have to have that whole background of photography. You buy this camera, you go to Herb Sklar's class, and then you just start taking
This
pictures.
class has no curriculum. We're just going to do it as we need. And the whole idea after 3 weeks that you're able to use your camera. I want you to just get out there, use your camera, take pictures, and then if you want, you join the photo club and we'll teach you to become more artistic and more about your camera.
Well, it's a great opportunity. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Digital Camera Prep School begins Tuesday, September 17th. See it in your Academy brochure.
We are in the midst of a food drive for the South Fort Myers Food Pantry. Not only can you donate food and money, but you can also donate your time, as these Shell Point ladies do.
Hi, Shell Point, and welcome to the Volunteer Corner. I'm Melody Desolé, here with 3 very important volunteers for the South Fort Myers Food Pantry. Welcome to all of you. Thanks for joining me. Now, we've all seen interviews about the South Fort Myers Food Pantry before, but this is coming from a perspective of our current volunteers who serve there. Jean, I'll start with you. What day of the month do you go to the food pantry?
The group of us, we go on the second Monday of every month.
And what time is your shift?
Our shift, actually the people come from 6 to 8, but our shift usually begins around 5 or 5:30, and we usually work till 8:30.
Okay, and when you talk about the people, you're referencing those who utilize the food pantry?
Yes. We consider them our either shopper or guests.
Excellent. Now, where is the food pantry located?
It's on Cypress Lake Drive. It's the Presbyterian Church.
Okay. And what's the layout look like of the pantry itself? Does it almost look like a grocery store?
Yes, it does. They have all the bakeries together, and the meats are together, and like the cereals and canned fruit. Everything is pretty much organized. Very nice.
Now, Barbara, I'll go with you. What do you do there when you're at the pantry?
Well, we're asked to push a cart so that the guests can pick out what they want on the shelves. They get to pick out what they want. Each section of the shelves has different kinds of things, so whether they want beans or whether they want spaghetti or stuff like that, they get to choose what they want.
Now, where does this food and these items come from?
We have food drives at the churches and other organizations that want to have food drives, and then it's picked up and brought to the church where we then stock it and let our guests have their choice of what they want.
Now, from what I understand, the Harry Chapin Food Bank actually allows for every $1 that you donate, they give you $6 of food. So are these people appreciative of the food pantry?
Yes, they are. Very much so. And they always, when we push their carts out, they always thank us. Every one of them thank us for what we've done for them, you know.
So what are the benefits you feel personally for being a volunteer there?
Just being thanked by them and see that they need it and they want it and that we're able to help them.
Betty, in addition to what Barbara had mentioned about the pushers, what other positions are available for volunteers?
Well, they have positions open for meat to distribute the meat. Mostly the men choose the meat. I haven't quite figured out. The women seem to choose the vegetables. Once the shelves need stocking at the end of the evening, we go and stock the shelves to be sure they're filled for the next Monday.
Okay. So these things obviously have to be non-perishable items if they're going to be staying on the shelves, although they do get picked up fairly quickly when people go through the pantry. Yeah. So in addition to the pushing of the carts, there's also stocking. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else as far as unloading trucks?
We could. Usually they do unload the carts, or we do.
Okay.
And now, there is one other thing we do. In addition to pushing it in the food pantry, we push the cart out to the car, and if needed, we do help them load their cars. And then they bring the cart back. And I think it's probably, the purpose of that is as much as you don't want carts all over, just like Publix, they don't want their carts all over.
Jean, is there something our residents can do, maybe if they can't go to the food pantry itself, but can they do something here?
There's always donations, money donations. That's about the main thing. But yet they can bring the food too. We have the food drive.
My understanding is we do have a food drive across Shell Point community in the Village Church, at the Resident Activity Center, at the Eagles Preserve Exercise Room, and at the Woodlands Commons. There's going to be boxes set up from September 11th through September 15th. So if you can't necessarily go out to the food pantry, you can certainly stay within your own community and donate non-perishable food items in those boxes.
They like tuna fish. I mean, that's usually, or the canned hams, or, or the canned chicken. A lot of people, our supply there is rather low. I mean, they can have like 1 6-ounce can of tuna. And how much does that make for one person or something like that?
So mainly the canned meats. They're looking for an assortment of the chunky Campbell's soup, I'm assuming, tastes very good to them. Pastas, peanut butters, non-perishables. It's always very appreciated. Thank you, ladies, so much for taking the time out on the second Monday of the month and for going to the food pantry. Shell Point residents, if you have an interest in getting involved outside of this campus, you can do so by contacting Lee Emmerich. His number is 432-9539, and he's the director of the South Fort Myers Food Pantry. Thank you so much for joining me. You can make a donation of non-perishables from September 11th through September 15th at any one of the designated spots on campus. Thank you so much. We'll see you around.
Carl Meyer told us about the Carefree Group, which allows caregivers to get together for some much-needed socialization.
Hello, everyone. I'm Terry Kolath, and I'm here today with Dr. Carl Meyer of Oakmont. We're talking about an opportunity for you to learn more in the Academy of Lifelong Learning about the Carefree Group. Thanks for joining me, Carl.
Good morning.
We have a wonderful opportunity coming up here to meet and listen to 3 residents who have acknowledged and worked with challenges and set up something wonderful as a model for other people. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, Bill Staples and I got together on coffee about 2.5 years ago and said, gee, when you live with someone who has some problem, whether it be physical, mental, or illness, or breathing, and they're not able to get to all the things that Shell Point has, you become a caregiver and somewhat excluded or from the other rest of the folks that are in the Shell Point. And we wondered if there was something we could put together to achieve the ability for both partners, the caregiver and the care receiver, to have fun and get out and meet one another and partake in various activities. We co-opted a couple of other folks, one of which was Ann Kimball, who had done a lot of work in social type work in Connecticut, and Lex Ralston. And the 4 of us did some planning for about 6 months and decided that we would meet. Number one, we would meet weekly. We would have lunch, since food usually makes everybody feel good. And we would do various things, such as some of the time we would do a trip, or we would have a lecture, And we'd play games, bocce and shuffleboard and bingo. And one of the exciting things about playing bingo, for instance, was that three of our mentally challenged spouses won at bingo. And I can tell you that it's very exciting to know that even though folks have challenges, they can succeed in other venues. They were thrilled, and their partners were thrilled that they were a part of a system. And I think the neat part about Carefree is that it's a support group for both caregiver and receiver. We laugh, we're comfortable with one another, we respect one another, we accept one another where we are today, and generally look forward to meeting. We meet every week. Now, sometimes we're away, but I think that most of us meet probably at least 45 of the Mondays we get there in a year.
And I also want to point out that there was a lot of generosity in this. Not only were the 4 couples looking at what you're saying for themselves, but particularly you and Dr. Staples starting out, I know you wanted to come up with something that other people could also take part in, perhaps from the start thinking of future groups.
We think that there are many people who are somewhat cloistered in their apartment, and we think that they could get out of it, and both partners, regardless of their activity, could have some fun. We've been to Ding Darling, we've had lectures at Ding Darling, we've had a special bus trip with a docent. We've been to the Lakes Park with a docent taking us through the garden. And I have to tell you that the people at Shell Point come out of the woodwork, so to speak, to help us. We have Lori Kohler, who's a caseworker, who is our advisor. Tom Frankenpaul always finds some place that we can meet, because we sometimes have a movie or a show that a slideshow that we want. And Inga Bregdahl has kind of fun. We've used some of her programs and integrate them. It's kind of a nice transition period for being totally independent, and as we go down the road of life, seeing some of us, all of us, lose some of our modalities of day-to-day living, so that when we integrate into Kings Crown or Arbor, or the Springs, we've been to all of them, using their facilities, it's kind of neat to know that, and get exposed to where we may well end up.
Sure.
It is fun, and in fact, there's a lot of laughing on everybody's part, and we do charades. We have word challenges. Give the definition of a word, which sounds kind of crazy for folks that have memory loss, but it's interesting that people can pick up on things, and they all do well.
And I love the name, Carefree. No matter what challenges a couple may be dealing with, this is the time in the week that you look ahead to just spend some carefree time together. We hope you will come out Monday, the 16th of September, meet with some people who have put this project together and who are enjoying carefree time. You'll hear all about it.
Jim and Jenny Plummer took an ambitious 4-month cruise around the world. They'll be sharing their stories on Saturday at 10 a.m. in the Grand Cypress Room. Here's a glimpse of what you'll see.
I was in the Air Force for a long time, and then we traveled all over the world together while we were in the military service. Wherever we went, we had fun. We enjoyed seeing things, traveling, and that was something that we've always done.
I always wanted to go on this, and we signed up for a Around the World cruise about 1.5 years in advance, and we followed the blogs of other people who were on the cruise for that whole 1.5 years to see what it would be like. So we were well prepared. So we started in Fort Lauderdale. We went through the Panama Canal.
Left Peru and headed westbound, and the first stop was Easter Island, which is one of the bucket list items that we wanted to to see, but unfortunately the weather was a little rough and the waves were pretty high.
So we sat up in the bar and we saw the statues.
And then Pitcairn Island, after Easter Island, that's where the Fletcher Christian and the mutineers ended up on Pitcairn Island. And their families' descendants are still there. But it turned out that everybody on the island had some vicious flu. How in the world it got out to Pitcairn Island, I cannot imagine. They did come out to the ship. Our ship gave them a bunch of supplies, food and other stuff that they wanted. So next island after Pitcairn was Tahiti.
Tahiti. Papeete.
Papeete, and we didn't do too much there. We'd not only been there on our honeymoon, but we'd been back a second time.
For our second honeymoon.
And from there we went to New Zealand. And we spent a week in 5 different ports in New Zealand. That was probably our favorite location where we traveled. The weather was magnificent and the people were so friendly and so nice, and there was so much to see and do. And
we were in Napier, and they just happened to have a bagpipe contest, and all these different bagpipe groups were there. We went to the Marine Museum in Auckland, where they had a lot of information about the America's Cup.
I went on just a wonderful hiking trip there with a group of wilderness hikers and had a great time.
And we went to a sheepdog demonstration. I mean, we also got to see all the animals down there, the kangaroos, the wombats. Yep. We went down to Tasmania, saw the Tasmanian devils.
After we left New Zealand, then we went across to Australia and had just fantastic time in Sydney, as everyone does. We sailed south from Sydney around the southern part of Australia, so we went to Adelaide and Kangaroo Island, and then up to Perth, Fremantle, spent 2 nights there. And then we went up to Indonesia. So we went to Bali and to Makassar, another island in Indonesia. We went up into the Philippines, and those were 2 of the best islands, Puerto Princesa and Manila. And really, the people were really genuinely excited to see us and happy we were there, and went out of their way. When you left the ship, there was all kinds of people there to greet you and welcome you. And then we left and went to Hong Kong. We enjoyed Hong Kong immensely. There's so much, again, to see and do. And I had been there 40 years ago also. And I thought they couldn't build any more buildings 40 years ago, and they're just massive now.
At night, they have an illumination of the buildings. We were just on the deck, and they have lasers, and the buildings all light up different colors. It's just beautiful. It really is. And we went out into the harbor to one of the famous floating restaurants. Hong Kong was very nice.
We went to Vietnam, to Nha Trang, and had a wonderful visit there also.
In Vietnam, we took a great tour, and we went to a noodle factory where they were making the noodles, and it must have been 200 degrees in there, and it was just, I don't know. We didn't want to eat noodles the rest of the trip, let me tell you. We went to where they made the little Vietnamese hats.
We ended up in Singapore and spent 2 days in Singapore. We went up to Malaysia and Thailand, a couple of islands up the coast, up to Phuket. I went up to the top of the mountain there on a tram. It was beautiful. From there we went over to Sri Lanka.
This is another thing, we went out to a tea plantation.
And we left there and went straight across the Indian Ocean, stopped at the Seychelles Islands, and then went to Madagascar.
Nosy Bee. That's where I got this necklace. I think it's a palm nut, someone said, but it's from Nosy Bee, which is a small island off Madagascar, famous for the lemurs. That's where one of the few places lemurs live in the world. So we went to Mozambique, which was really a very interesting city, Mobutu.
And from there we went into South Africa and went to 1, 2, 3 ports in South Africa. Went to Richards Bay and then into Durban. And in both locations we went on little mini safaris, day safaris into smaller safari areas. And the first day, Richards Bay, it was just pouring down rain, so it wasn't much fun.
All the animals were too smart to come out.
In Durban, we had more success on the little mini safari there.
What did you see?
Saw a lot of wild animals.
The Cape buffalo.
The zebras, the giraffes, things like that.
Wildebeest.
The big surprise was Cape Town. We knew nothing about Cape Town at all.
It's a great city.
What a wonderful city that is. A very international, cosmopolitan city. Over in Namibia.
It was one of my favorite stops. They have these huge colonies of flamingos. The part we were in were these fantastic sand dunes, just hundreds of feet high, that go right down to the ocean. I am not very brave. And this tour, I kept on asking our friend who did it, well, we're just going to go look at the sand dunes. She said, yeah, we're just going to go look at them. So we go out in the four-wheel drive. We went right up them in the four-wheel drive and right over the top.
Yeah.
Right over the top.
That was great
It was great fun. And then we had lunch out in the middle of this bowl of sand dunes, and they bring out fresh oysters and all this stuff and wine. It was just incredible. We did have a good adventure there. It was just a beautiful place.
From that point on, we go across the South Atlantic and we stop first at St. Helena, which is a very small island out there. And if you've heard of it at all, you're going to know that that's where Napoleon Bonaparte was exiled, out in the middle of the absolute middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And so we visited his home, Napoleon Bonaparte's home, and his grave site where he was originally buried. By the time we got to the equator, we made 2 stops in Brazil, at Fortaleza and then at Belém. Belém being the entryway to the Amazon. Trekking in the jungle, in the Amazon jungle there, and had a pretty good time.
St. Lucia.
St. Lucia. I got off and wandered. I did a lot of walking around town, which we've been there too many times before. And it's an island, it's nice. And then back to Fort Lauderdale. So it was 115 days, close to 50 port stops. We had 19 formal parties on board the ship, so we had to have the tuxedo and all the right gowns, and you get to know everybody. After a 1-week cruise, you're just somebody that's coming and going, but on a long 4-month cruise like that, you're part of the family.
It was hard to come back. It was bad having to make our own bed after 4 months. That
Do your
was
own cooking.
Not a good feeling.
So I'd recommend it to anybody that has 4 months free time.
We're glad you joined us for today's show. Tune in next week for more stories and news from around your community. Until then, this is Shell Point Today for the weekend of September 13th, 14th, and 15th. I'm Dan Filgreen, and from all of us here at Shell Point TV, we hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you again on Monday.